Good morning. It is 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Arizona time as well. My name is Omar. We have a good program for you today. I'm glad you guys were able to join us. We are live on three platforms. You can watch us on LinkedIn, YouTube, and also Facebook. Let's go ahead and show you who we will be having today. We will be having Professor Danko Shipka. I hope I pronounced it right. He will tell us in a second. He's a Slavic language professor from Arizona State. He was actually my professor back in, I think, almost 12, 14 years now, back in around 2010 or 2009, something like that. Very wonderful guy. I want to get his ideas about language learning in our times and a little bit of background. Let's go ahead and bring in our special guest who is in Arizona, Mr. Danko. Welcome to the stage, sir. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm great. I hope you're doing fine too.
I am excellent, doing very well. It's a spring day now, second day of spring, and you can always see and smell the flowers blossoming.
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you for coming on. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you got interested in teaching languages to students.
I'm a professor of Slavic languages and linguistics, which is a kind of general theory of languages at Arizona State University. Before that, I was at before my position at Arizona State, and I've been here for more than 20 years. I was at different universities in Europe. And teaching languages is a little bit of a family tradition. My father was a linguist as well, so I basically inherited that from him. Um, Frankly speaking, during the course of my study, I was more interested in literature than in languages. But then, as my studies progressed, I got more interested in languages, and then basically things took their natural course. And I kept teaching languages. So, and linguistics, a general theory of languages.
That's awesome. I like that. It always goes back to our parents and all that. Just like me, my parents were
No.
engineering background and education, so it went to that steps. Was your father also a professor as well? Like he was a teacher?
Yes, yes, he was a professor at the School of Performing Arts, of Theatrical Arts in Sarajevo, teaching scene speech uh, and language norms and so on. Before that, he was the founder of the Language Institute in Sarajevo, in today's Bosnia Herzegovina, which used to be in Yugoslavia back then.
That's awesome. That's great. And then tell us about how do you pronounce your name? Did I pronounce it correct? Is it
Yeah, that was perfect. Just like SH. Yeah, you did a perfect job.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Perfect. Tell us now. You're in Arizona State. Obviously, you're still teaching language. You have a lot of books that you have written. What brought you to Arizona and Arizona State? Talk to us about that detail.
That's pretty much a random event. I have a very good colleague, Wales Brown, at Cornell University, who is currently co-editing the Cambridge Handbook of Slavic Linguistics with me. So we're still cooperating after all these years very intensely. And he was supposed to deliver a lecture at a Summer Language Institute here. At that time, I was working for a government contractor for a publishing house in Washington, D.C., and he couldn't go, and he told me, why wouldn't you go there instead of me? So I went. I said I would come to give that lecture, but then the person who was supposed to teach the summer course uh, dropped out, so they asked me to deliver a lecture but also teach the summer course, which I did. And then I kept teaching that summer course for next 2 years, and then eventually a position opened up, so I'm permanently at ASU since 2002.
Awesome, awesome. When you started, did you start as a BSc professor? Did they have this program? What year was that?
Yes, I started as BCS. It was in 2000, in the year of 2000. Then I also taught Polish, introduced basically When I started to work permanently at ASU, they only had Russian. So during the regular academic year, so I introduced Polish and BCS in the program, kind of to diversify the Slavic program.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What wanted you to continue and study actually Bosansky rather than other language? I know your background is from there. Why be a language professor rather than a language professor or a writer in a different sense?
What do you mean? I mean, in what sense?
Like, why have you decided to pursue language learning in terms of teaching a language of Bosansky, your background, rather than.
Yeah. So I also have background, educational background in Russian and in Polish.
Hmm.
So I was also teaching Russian, but when you say Slavic languages, very often in the United States, everything else is eclipsed by Russian. Russian is obviously the most important Slavic language for various reasons: great literature, a high number of speakers, political reasons, security issues, and so on and so forth. But it's always good to have a diversity. So if you want to be a roundup linguist and to give a kind of broader perspective, you need to include other languages, because every language has its own perspective. Every language is a different window to the world. So you cannot just look through the Russian window and claim that you are looking through the windows of other Slavic languages. You have to be more diversified. So that was basically the point of my introducing these other Slavic languages, and obviously, whenever possible, I would advocate for including more. Obviously, if there is enough interest.
Obviously, that's great. What do you think? Why do you think it's important for students or people in general to learn the language in our times right now? When people are on social media and all that, do you think it's important for them to pick up a language and learn about different languages around the world? You think that's important?
Yes, I think it's a critical skill. For many years, there was this ideology of assimilation in this country, where everybody is expected to speak English, and the argument was everybody in the world speaks English, and so on. However, there are several problems with that view. One problem is that around the world, in a very few countries, people speak at the level that enables you to have a sophisticated discussion or business deals or something like that. In most places, people are below that level. So you need to have somebody proficient in the language in question in order to lead a more sensible, sophisticated discussion, or to close a sensitive business deal. Secondly, every language gives a certain way of thinking. And if you are imprisoned in English, you are confined to just one particular way of seeing the world. Whereas with every new language, you get a new pair of eyes, you get a new window into the world. And many languages have some things that are peculiar, that are different. For example, in English, you say sister and brother. In Mandarin Chinese, you have to say older or younger sister or brother. So, for example, younger brother is Didi, older brother is Gege. You cannot just say brother. Or in Slavic languages, you do not have to differentiate between foot and leg, between arm and hand. It's the same word for foot and leg, the same word for arm and hand. It's the same word in Russian, even for brain and spinal cord, for the brain and spinal cord, mozg. So there are a lot of peculiarities that every language brings, which influences the way you think and the way you act, because in many languages you say things more openly. In some languages, more you basically sugarcoat things, and so on and so forth. So, for example, I lived a semester in Japan. In Japan, typically when somebody is not going to do something, they're not straightforwardly going to say no. They'll say, I'll try, or something like that. And from the context, you're supposed to uh, realize that they will not do it. So there are a lot of different ways of, and all that brings these cross-linguistic differences, bring the danger of miscommunication. So it's a critical skill. Fortunately enough, in this country, there is a very strong change in attitude toward language learning. There are a lot of movements, such as seals of biliteracy, where school children and anybody else who is interested can get a certificate that you command a certain language at a certain level. And even if your language is, let's say that you are a speaker of Punjabi, that was spoken in your home and that's not offered in your high school, you can take tests and get a certificate that you are bilingual. There are bilingual education programs where you have most commonly between Spanish and English, because that's the most common language, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of changes for the better recently in the country, which kind of go against a long-standing tradition of monolingualism, which was very wrong in many ways.
Absolutely. I like your idea of you're saying that if you learn a different language, you're going to get a different perspective on things on their end. You mentioned the Chinese and all that, and that's true. A lot of Americans are narrow-minded and they don't study other languages. And when they do that, like in high school, I took Spanish. They offer Spanish and French, and I'm
Mm-hmm,
glad I took Spanish to get that idea of how things are spoken. And some of the words are similar from what they used in
mm-hmm,
Spanish, but it's definitely something important that I would recommend a lot of people, as you mentioned, to study languages and study our world and see how things are different, because you'll get a different culture in that sense
mm-hmm.
as well, right? Danko, absolutely. Your thoughts on that?
Yes, that's also, it's not only that you get a new perspective. Basically, the language learning in the United States in recent decades, and most notably in the last, I would say, 20 years, have improved, has improved enormously, in a sense that teaching is focused on tangible final learning outcomes. They are called can-do skills. So basically, nowadays it's a standard pretty much in every university program and in most high school programs, to start with asking the question, what is that my students are going to be able to do? For example, you start very early with, I'll be able to introduce myself, I'll be able to tell about my nuclear family, I'll be able to tell about what I do every day. I will be able to tell what I like and what I dislike, and so on and so forth. So once these, and you have professional organizations such as ACTFL, American Council on Teaching of Foreign Languages, which publish these can-do statements, and you can get examples for can-do statements at each level. Then you ask yourself, how are you going to know that they're getting these skills? That's called assessment. There is a formative assessment, like the feedback that you provide to the students, and then summative assessment at the very end, that you, or at certain critical points, that you want to see whether the students have the skills, and so on. And only after that you plan class activities. And class activities are basically, there is in Monterey, California, there is the institution called the Defense Language Institute. That's the institution where the Department of Defense teaches their languages. And they have thousands upon thousands of students every year. And they have done longitudinal studies and concluded that the time on task is by far the best predictor of success in language learning. So the instructor doesn't matter that much, the program doesn't matter, it matters, but not that much. So as long as the language learner is engaged in activities of language learning, and they don't have to be in class, it can be like watching a TV program in the target language, reading a newspaper, chatting with somebody on some discussion group or something like that, or in social media in that language. that's going to contribute to success in language learning. So if the student has the sense of tangible uh, outcomes of learning, tangible skills that are meaningful in real world setting, they would be more inclined to invest more time into language learning.
I agree with you. Yeah, I'm actually studying the BCS language, and I noticed that if I'm actually engaged in some kind of an activity, I learn better. Or if the instructor does it in a certain way rather than me just reading the book, I'm gonna learn it a lot better. I'll give you
Mm-hmm.
an example. When we were doing the numbers and counting 11, 12, 13, 14, all these, that the teacher had a way of saying it in a strong way, and mentally I was able to remember it. But yeah, going out, seeing the things like, for example, tree or seeing that and looking at it, remembering it, that's gonna help you a lot better. And I noticed that having those activities with a group or doing classes together is a lot better than you studying by yourself. It's gonna definitely improve. Would you say that a lot of students, uh, their memory improves once they learn the language? It's mostly gonna help them, I think, for the future. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, so there were various studies on how language learning interacts with other cognitive skills that you are acquiring, let's say doing math or something like that. So there are studies that say that learning a language improves these other skills. There are studies that say there is no correlation between those, so they neither improve nor hamper. But there are no studies that found that learning a language hampers these other skills, that it is adverse to learning these other skills. So basically, by learning a language, you get a new perspective on life. You get the ability to understand different viewpoints all around the world, and you get the ability to communicate with a wider, in a meaningful way, with a broader number of people, but you don't have anything to lose. It may improve your other cognitive skills. It may not, but it will definitely not harm them.
Absolutely. What would you say if somebody came in and he's just watching this and they say, I am interested in learning a new language, be it Chinese, be it Hindi. Where would somebody start? Would you recommend them just sign up for a course? Or should they just look it up, research it a bit, and then start taking courses wherever it's available? What's your
Yeah,
recommendation?
yeah, I would. Well, so if obvious, so first, one thing is the choice of language, and I think the choice of language should be meaningful in a sense that you're interested. Let's say you want to study Russian because you read Russian literature, you read Leo Tolstoy in English translation, and that's why you want to learn Russian, or you want to work at NSA as an intelligence officer, and that's why you would need to learn Russian, or your family has roots in Russia, so you want to learn it, or you had a neighbor that you liked who spoke Russian, and so on. So there has to be some kind of personal connection, and that
Right.
can be family, that can be neighbors, that can be boyfriend, girlfriend, that can be professional interests, that can be interest in. We have a lot of people who are now taking Japanese because of anime and manga, because
Oh,
they got fascinated with in that, or they take Korean because of K-pop and Squid Games and so on and so forth. So there has to be some kind of connection that makes you motivated, because the worst thing is a language learner who is not motivated, because I always tell to my students, it is you who drives the car. I'm merely a traffic cop. I'll tell you when you're wrong and so on, and I'll tell you when it's okay, and so I'll show you the directions, but it is your work that basically does the job. And then secondly, where to learn the language. Obviously, if you are a university student, it's always good to take a university course, because you are going to benefit most of it, because these courses are methodologically most rigorous, and you have best people teaching them and so on and so forth. However, if that's not available, there are a lot of outlets. There are private language learning industry. There are platforms like Duolingo where you can learn languages and so on. In recent years, we have witnessed a huge improvement, technological improvement that helps learning languages. Remember, the single best predictor is time on task. So years ago, when I started to learn any language, let's say I learned French, you could only listen to some radio because that was before internet. You could find some like middle wave radio or short wave radio where you can get French, or it was not a stable signal and so on and so forth. So it's very difficult to get to the materials that you need. If you look at it now, you have tons of materials. Pretty much every TV program is available streaming online on YouTube, or they have their own web page where they stream. You have tons of TV series or that you can stream in target languages and so on and so forth. So things have improved in the sense that there are a lot of opportunities to improve. Most recently, artificial intelligence is coming very strong. We had in a class that I teach right now, the ethics of language assessment. We had David Bong, the director of one of the testing companies, saying that it is coming like a freight train. And it's going to give more opportunities because you can chat with a chat agent, you can get immediate feedback, the technology will progress even more, and the role of the instructors will also be changed in a sense that the instructors would also need to vet the materials, the databases, and find the databases that chat agents use. So if you have this open AI systems like the one that Meta has, you can determine what goes in there, and that determines how the chat agent behaves. So that's going to bring new possibilities for the students to extend that time that they spend with the language. Because if you look at it, the time that they spend in university classes is pretty limited because universities are also research facilities. So people like me also do research, writing books, doing projects, and so on and so forth. So you cannot devote so much time to teaching, but in the future that's going to be compensated. It's already compensated by the ability to listen to podcasts in foreign languages while running or while preparing dinner or something like that, and also by chatting with chat agents if they're based on the materials on the large data sets that your language instructor has vetted and included what is needed, and they don't contain any junk and so on and so forth. That's going to be a huge improvement in language learning as well.
It is, yes. And when you were saying that, there's an app that I came across recently, and you speak to it, it'll speak back to you, just like Chat GTP and all that. And so it's
Uh-huh.
amazing how it had improved now. A lot of people can learn languages at an easier, faster way than they did in the past. And all this technology is definitely helping. And you mentioned also, yeah, the instructor is like a police cop, right? The student has to do his job in terms of learning and doing that part. If that, then it's just worthless and you're just wasting your money. But yeah, there's a lot of resources out there. You mentioned a lot of that. That's great. Um, we're almost coming to the end of this program. Usually it's about 30 minutes. Tell us a little bit about some of your books that you've written. I know you've the word Kaniga, right? Kaniga books and
Yeah,
stuff.
yes, yes, yes.
Tell us a few books. I know I bought a couple of one of your books that you had written about Islamic terms. I had found it. It's a wonderful
Hmm.
book. I have it actually somewhere here. But tell us a few books and any books that people might want to be interested in, help them in language learning. And we're going to close it up in about 5, 6 minutes now.
Yes, my most recent book is titled Water, Whiskey, and Vodka. a story of Slavic languages. And the reason for such a peculiar title is that water, whiskey, and vodka come from the same root. It was the same word, water. Whiskey means water of life, vodka means little water, and obviously water is water. So whiskey is something that is associated with English speaking cultures, although it's primarily Celtic, but Celtic languages are kind of a little bit oppressed by the English language. And then vodka is associated with Slavic cultures, and water is common to everybody. So there is something common to the English speaking culture, something common to the Slavic cultures, and something that they share. So this book gives a general introduction to Slavic languages and their literacies and Slavic nations for non-specialists. So somebody who has heritage like Polish, Russian, Czech, whatever, may take that book to learn a little bit more about the family of Slavic languages. Another recent book that I did is called The Geography of Words. And this geography of words is about these peculiar things in languages. Like, for example, this is not only Slavic languages, although most examples are from Slavic languages, but it's many other languages. And for example, how do you congratulate in different languages, or how do you call new technologies such as scooters in different languages, and how languages, how do you curse and so on in languages and so on. So this is a kind of, this is meant to be a popular account that celebrates, which is again aimed at a general audience, that celebrates the diversity of our global linguistic scene. We have 7,000 languages in the world, and unfortunately, most of them are endangered, or they're basically
Wow.
about to die out. But still, even those that remain
Mhm.
will display enormous diversity in their forms, in the words, and so on and so forth. So,
Fascinating. Here's the book, right? The book that you had written. That's the one you were mentioning.
yes.
You can see it, so you guys can check it out. But that's fascinating. 7,000. You have enlightened us all with your words, Danko. It's amazing. Uh, Go ahead. You were going to continue, please. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's these are the two most recent books, and the book that is coming out in May that I co-edited is called The Cambridge Handbook of Slavic Linguistics. I have co-edited that with Wales Brown of Cornell University, and that's a short kind of account of major issues in the theory of Slavic languages, which is a part of the Cambridge University Press series on their handbooks. So it's a kind of something where you can get the information about a given topic, in this case, Slavic linguistics, the study of Slavic languages. So this is not an account of languages per se, but the account of different fields of study, scholarly study of Slavic languages. So these are the most recent. I also did a lot of other monographs, dictionaries, as you mentioned, that one, Bosnian Islamic Dictionary, which I co-authored with Sabahuddin Cheman, who is a local imam here in Phoenix.
Yes.
That was a very interesting project. I also did, for example, colloquial Serbo-Croatian English Dictionary, which is like all the words that you don't find in decent dictionaries, which is like slang, colloquialism, dialectism, obscene words, and so on and so forth, which is needed for people who do translation and interpretation in government services and so on. So they have commissioned that book, for example.
Fascinating, fascinating. I like that. Yeah, I bought the book, the one that you mentioned with Sabahattin. Amazing writing in there. He's a good friend of ours, and we know him. And I appreciate your time, Danko, for coming in here and enlightening us about all this language learning and the future. We learned a lot. I did, and whoever is watching can definitely learn. They can rewatch the replay on LinkedIn and YouTube as well. and very interesting. I appreciate you coming in. Any last couple of words, last minute words, sir?
Thank you for having me. It's always fun to be able to talk about languages and language learning because that's my kind of lifelong passion.
Excellent. Awesome. I'm going to end the stream. Guys, we'll be back this Sunday for another special show called Do You Really Know? And it'll be at 9:30 Pacific time. See you guys next time. Then we're going to end the stream. Take care.